Today we're going to build this flat pack side table on 4-eyes. If you like traditional woodworking videos, you know, of dudes covered in sawdust, cutting wood, well, then soak it in right now, because this is about all you're going to get. The reason I say that is because other than cutting out some panels to nest my pieces on, and then cutting a bevel on the underside of the top of my side table, the rest of this project was cut on my X-Carve 3D carving machine, which people often refer to as a CNC. Alright, so before we jump into that, let me explain the piece, how it came together, and how it goes together. I think it's best to do that with some drawing and 3D modeling, so let's hop in. For me, the whole thing started in SketchUp. This isn't a necessary step in creating a piece like this, but it's where I like to do all of my modeling, and it's where I design pretty much everything that I make, be it by hand or machine. So here, that's what I'm doing. I'm not really paying a lot of attention to specific dimensions of the individual pieces here, just kind of drawing it out to be the overall dimensions that I wanted, and then letting the look of what I want dictate the final size and shape of the individual pieces. So now that you can see what it looks like, let's skip ahead for a second to the finished piece so that you can see how everything goes together. In total, I had to carve out 3 different types of pieces: a top, a center brace, and 4 identical leg pieces. To put the whole thing together, each of the legs mates to the center brace, as you can see in this shot here. Those little circles on the inside corners are called dog bones, I think. And their purpose is because router bits, no matter how small, are going to leave interior corners that are radiused. So this just lets the pieces fully seat. Once all 4 legs are attached to the center brace, these little nubs on the tops of the legs slide into the slots in the underside of the top. Here's a time lapse of me putting the whole thing together. These machines are pretty darn accurate, but there's always going to be some slight discrepancies between how things fit together in theory and how they are in reality. And in this case, those variations actually help. If everything came together without any tension or friction, nothing would really hold together. It's really that small amount of tension that makes it where you can lift the piece by the top without the base falling out. And here you can see it's not the world's strongest piece, but perfectly fine for a side table. Back to the drawing. So after I had modeled the piece to my liking, I was actually able to export 2-dimensional SVG files that I could import into Easel. Easel is Inventable's web-based software platform, and it's what the X-Carve runs off of. You can design things in it, or you can import SVG files into it, and it's actually a pretty easy program to use. And fun fact, it's free. I'm going to throw a link below, and if you've never checked it out, click on the link and play around with it a bit. As I said, it's easy, and you can kind of virtually build shapes and play around with simulating projects, even if you don't have a machine. So anyhow, as I said before, I made my files in SketchUp, but you don't need to have this. You can make SVG files to carve from any number of 3D modeling platforms, Illustrator, or, like I said before, with Easel itself. That said, with my files ready to go, I started carving. So, this was my first time ever carving anything, and I definitely made some mistakes. Most notable in this shot, here I'm getting frustrated because the gap I'm cutting in my center brace is too wide. Turns out there was a really simple explanation for this. I was telling the software that I was using an 1/8 inch bit, but I had a 1/4 inch bit in the router. So yeah, these machines can do a lot of work for you, but they're definitely not idiot-proof. Me being the idiot. So while the machine's running, I want to transition to the review portion of this video. So Chris, take it away. Thanks, Chris. So Inventable sent me this machine with the stipulation that I use it for a little while and then give it my honest review. So not a favorable and honest review, just my honest review. So I've been using the machine now for a couple weeks, really only have one solid project under my belt. So this is not going to be a real in-depth comprehensive review, but these are my impressions from putting the machine together, using it for a project, and I guess kind of my first impressions of it. So overall, I would say that I actually really like the machine. There's really only a few of them out there on the market that allow essentially a hobbyist to get into this world, you know, where you're not going to have to spend multiple thousands of dollars to even get your foot in the door. So there's only a few of those out there, and this is one of them. That said, the first thing that I would tell anybody that's thinking about getting into this world is that what you're buying is, I don't want to say a kit, but you know, it's not something that you bring home, take it out of the box, plug it in, and there you go, you're off and running. you're going to be assembling this thing, and it's a fairly in-depth process. So going into this, knowing that was something that actually kind of gave me a lot of anxiety. I'm not really good at doing this kind of thing, and I don't really have a lot of experience in it. I'm good at, figuring out my own solutions to problems and designing things. That, no problem, I can do that. But when I have to follow somebody else's instructions, I don't know, it's just not the way that my brain works. So because of that, like I said, I had a lot of anxiety going into it. Or I don't want to say a lot of anxiety, but I wasn't looking forward to it. Let's just put it that way. After having gone through it though, I'm not going to sit here and say it's the most enjoyable process in the world, but I actually do think it's a good thing. And the reason for that is because through doing it, you're going to become very familiar with this thing. You're going to get intimate with it. You're going to have your hands on all the parts. You're putting things together. You really start to understand the way the machine works, why things are the way that they are. And, should you encounter those problems down the line, you're going to be light years ahead of where you would have been if you did just get something where you took it out of a box, plugged it in, and you were ready to go. So because of that, I actually came to find purpose in the assembly process, and I actually think it is a good thing overall. And like I said, I'm not good at this kind of thing, so I really do feel like if I can do it, then pretty much anybody within reason should be able to do it also. So as I've said, there are good things about the assembly. One of the other things I didn't really mention is, in a way, it can be kind of fun at times. I would kind of equate it to the same sort of satisfaction that you might get from putting like a really complex Lego set together. You definitely hit these milestones and you get a sense of accomplishment, and you get excited when you start seeing things come together. That said, there were a few parts of the assembly that I didn't like. If I had to describe the assembly process overall, I would say that in the beginning, it's maybe a little bit too thorough, where they're giving you, 110% of the information that you actually need to be able to put it together. And so I guess that's good in the beginning because it's confidence inspiring. You feel like you know exactly what you're doing. As you go on, it does get a little bit more difficult at parts. And I actually think that the instructions become slightly not thorough enough. So it's like they're giving you 95% of the information that you need. Now, luckily, this, for me at least, it wasn't too big of an issue. Those times that I did run into a few stumbling spots, I was usually able to figure things out by just kind of going online, looking up some pictures, just kind of referencing what I thought they were probably talking about, but maybe I wasn't 100% certain. And that was usually enough to get me over the next hurdle. One of the other problems that I ran into, and I don't know if this was just unique to me or if some other people, I would assume some other people had this, was that you're going to get a lot of little parts in bags, and they each have a unique SKU, and the instructions are really good at referring to all those SKUs, so you know what parts are what and what you're supposed to do with things. There were a few times though that some of my SKUs were off, or they were duplicates of other things that clearly weren't the same piece. So pretty much in those instances, it was pretty much just a process of elimination. I was usually able to figure out what they were probably referring to. But again, when you are on those hard parts and you're not completely 100% certain what you should do, not exactly confidence inspiring in those moments. But again, you can get through it, and hopefully that was unique to me and you don't have that issue. Okay, so moving on past the assembly. So if I had to guess, I would think that probably one of the strongest things that the X-Carve has going for it is the software that it uses, Easel. So one of the cool things about Easel, even if you don't have a machine, is, I'm putting a link down below. You can click on that. You can go create an account. You can start playing around with it. And in a way, it's kind of like, I don't know, virtually CNCing projects, if you will. Overall, I would say it's a pretty intuitive system for interfacing with the machine. I would guess probably easier than other things that are out there. Again, I don't know. But for me, it was, the best thing I can say is honestly, go download it, play with it for an hour, and you'll see what I'm talking about. For me, I played with it for a few minutes. I imported things from Illustrator and from other software platforms, but you can build projects right in there. It'll generate real-time previews of what your process or what your project should look like. You can simulate the cut and see how long it's going to take, see the paths that the tool is going to take. When things are not right with your file, it'll be pretty evident in the preview of your project. So all those things give you a lot of confidence when you don't really know what you're doing or where you're in a position like I'm in, because if something's wrong, you're going to kind of see it before you actually start cutting something. So that's a really nice crutch to be able to lean on. Another thing that's really good about the software is that when it does come time that you actually are ready to start cutting something, as soon as you hit that carve button, it's not going to just start moving. It's going to kind of walk you through a checklist of things so that you feel certain that you're doing things right, that you've accounted for everything. And I guess I would just kind of call it like a teaching tool. So, the first time I'm super thankful for that, because it makes me feel like it's kind of holding my hand through that process in the beginning. Maybe as you become an expert, it gets kind of annoying and maybe you just rush through it. I don't know, I'm not there yet. But I feel like there's a lot of things that I probably would forget normally in the beginning that because of the way that it walks you through starting a project, it's kind of reminding you each time. So it gives me the confidence that, even though I only have one project under my belt right now, after I have, 3 or 4 or 5 projects under my belt, it's going to kind of become second nature. I'm going to know what I'm doing, and, it'll just be a lot easier of a process. Not that it's particularly hard in the beginning. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Again, not foolproof, as I illustrated earlier in the video with my 1/4 inch bit as opposed to an 1/8 inch bit. But again, user error, those are the things that happen. But I do think that overall, it's a pretty good teaching tool. It does give you confidence that you might not have. You're not going to feel super lost at any point, hopefully, in the assembly or while you're first learning how to use the machine. And I think that after I get a few more projects under my belt, it will become a pretty natural workflow, and a good way to turn things that are in your head into digital drawings and then into tangible pieces. So that's all I got. Hopefully that helps, and I'll see you next time. Bye. You can turn the camera off.